I'm Albert. Thank you for watching vlogs about nothing. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your night to join me. Tonight I'm talking about bioengineered food and what it is and if it has any future with us as consumers. And so I'll first begin with saying that bioengineered food ingredients are any ingredients that go into a pre-made, already cooked, or yet to be cooked food item that is not something that can be found in nature. Now, this is a very simple definition of bioengineered food ingredient, but a more technical one can be found in the links in the description below and is exactly as it pertains to the modification of genes. And then furthermore, the rabbit hole goes down into the advocates for bioengineered food and its evidence, scientifically based, saying that there's no potential harm and or health risk for the consumption of such, while there's an entirely different group of people who say that it is just all bad and that at any point from which the process is changed, it should be labeled as such. And again, they're very both pragmatic and interesting arguments on both sides. I feel like I find myself falling on the advocation for at least the awareness so that consent can happen when it comes to the consumer and their buying choice and their food options as it's related to buying things that have bioengineered food ingredients in them or do not have bioengineered food ingredients in them. And exactly, in 2016, Congress passed the National Bioengineered Food Disclosure Standard, which mandates that all importers, manufacturers of food, and large retailers disclose to the consumer via a way to do such on packaging to signify such. Now, I say a way because it could be met, the standard could be met in any way by the importers, the manufacturers, or the retailers. So the argument, again, on the one side is that there is disclosure. The argument is that sometimes the disclosure isn't as transparent as we think it would be. So point in fact, if the food product in question has no specific statement as to its bioengineered food ingredients present or not, does not exactly mean it doesn't have GMOs in it or bioengineered food ingredients in it still. And again, so the arguments go on both sides, but I do have to fall on the side of full disclosure, because the disclosure, again, can also come not just in the statement, but through the QR code. And so, and also on the website. So if a consumer doesn't go onto the website or doesn't scan the QR code and there's not a statement that says has bioengineered food ingredients or not, does not necessarily mean that it doesn't. Again, because you have to check all three mediums of communication there to make sure that it definitely did or didn't. And so there's that argument, right? But, so an example of bioengineered food ingredients in this country that are exported rather globally are papaya, potatoes, alfalfa, soy, so corn, canola. These kinds of products are all genetically modified. They're all bioengineered food ingredient stabilized. Now, the good part of bioengineered food ingredients and or GMOs, and we don't often hear this, or at least I don't, in any sort of modern day rhetoric, and I feel as though I don't hear it anymore because it's yet to come to fruition, and if it has not yet come to fruition, my argument is that it most likely won't, in terms of the following. A benefit, or one could construe as a positive net gain for the usage of GMOs and or bioengineered food ingredients, is the fact that it could make food cheaper and thereby more readily available to underserved and impoverished people all over the world. And again, I would say if that argument had any sort of creed and or relevance to the modern day situation, it would be as though there would be nobody hungry. And I still see lots of people hungry, not just in my own local community, but on the news and just reading some insightful articles online lets me know that, at least from the information that I've been given, that there's still a mass shortage of food almost all over the world. And again, so if people still aren't getting fed and companies are saying that a net gain or a positive of them is that we can be more flexible, food is cheaper, and we can help more people. There is no evidence that we have yet done any of these things, so I just don't see it as a viable argument. And so I cannot tell you about the future of bioengineered food ingredients and or GMOs, only that I would be particularly always skeptical of the food that I ingest and of the ingredients that are in it. And I guess just wait for science to determine a conclusive answer as to whether or not GMOs or bioengineered food ingredients are something that is are sustainable and can be used to achieve a net gain and or positive in our global society, or if it's just another example of sodium nitrite, which I have just learned is by far the worst thing to happen to any food product in this country. And I'll include some links in the description below about that whole thing that went down in this country. But I will also say publicly that I have no problem with the consumption of meat and or the availability of meat ready products and things like this. But what I don't like is sodium nitrite being put in the meat that I choose to eat because it's assumed that I won't buy it if it's not a certain color. I think that's very presumptuous, and I think it's a super flaky attitude when it comes to the realization that you could cut costs by not adding this. And there's been many, many examples of places all over the world that have not included nitrites in their meat and or poultry products and pork and have been just fine. And in fact, there's just some really good examples all over the internet. It's a different subject, I know, but when it comes to bioengineered food ingredients, there is a law that regulates companies to disclose these things, and I'd encourage us all to look at these things, even if it takes a little bit of work to find out what exactly is in the food we're eating. But that's just my opinion.